Coming up on Somerville Neighborhood News, Somervillians head downtown for a rally, the latest on Union Square destruction, construction, and the negotiation of a community benefits agreement, a look at the taxi versus Uber war, and an update on how Tufts is treating victims of sexual harassment. All this and more on Somerville Neighborhood News.
Hello and welcome to Somerville Neighborhood News. Today is October 21st. I'm Kayla Mamalak. Somerville Neighborhood News is a community service production of SCATV, put together by staff, interns, and your neighbors. We bring you the news every 2 weeks on SCATV Channel 3 and on our website, somervilleneighborhoodnews.org. We begin in downtown Boston. Earlier this month, Somerville hosted over 24 bands for the annual Honk Festival, but it wasn't all honking, fun, and games. Somerville Neighborhood News sent me out on Friday, October 10th to follow some bands who were using their music to support the fight for a $15 minimum wage. This was the battle cry of Honk for 15.
The main idea around the fight for 15 is pretty simple. We think the minimum wage should be raised to $15 an hour.
Marching bands from all over the country, including Emperor Norton's Stationary Marching Band from Somerville, lent their voices and instruments to the growing national movement.
Honk for 15 is to gather the community, a bunch of different unions and labor workers from a bunch of different places to rally together to send the message that we need fair wages, that we just need paid sick days, just fair rights for all these workers that are busting their butts that deserve it.
After meeting at Downtown Crossing, the band split up to rally at 3 low-wage locations: the Wendy's, the Corner Mall, and the H&M. And the bands weren't the only ones to show support. Many people joined in, including low-wage workers themselves.
I think it's a good idea because, some people, they're struggling every day, and some people don't have enough money to take care of their kids or pay their bills. Some people want to move out their mom's house, and some people they have to pay their student loans. Like me, I have to pay my student loans.
It is so good to see you guys out here fighting for 15. We need that. We need that.
And for some, activism and music go hand in hand.
I feel music is really at the heart of it because music is and should be active, and the root of activism is being active. It's doing something, it can be an action, it can be writing a letter, it can be whatever, but doing something is really what matters. And so music is a great way to get people doing something.
And that is exactly what happened.
This is a great event, bringing together workers from all industries, and these bands are really putting a positive message on the work that we're doing to show that this is a fun thing and we're having a great time organizing low-wage workers to make a better life for everyone and a better Massachusetts for everyone.
Last summer, the state legislature did pass a bill to raise minimum wage. However, it was only for $11 and it will not be active until 2017. Will the honking and the music behind me help fight the fight for 15? We'll keep you posted. With Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Kayla Mamalak. If you want to see more of Honk, check out SCATV Channel 3 on Wednesday, October 22nd or 29th at 5 p.m. Or check the website, scatvsomerville.org/watch, and look under the Specials tab. Now, here's some news. A brutal attack in the Winter Hill neighborhood has people and elected officials worried about how group homes are supervised. The alleged assailant is a repeat offender, and many in the neighborhood had complained about the home at 155 Central Street. The campaign finance reform law was considered by the Board of Aldermen again on October 14th at a public hearing. The board voted again since the mayor vetoed it back in September. The board heard from 15 people who all backed the law, but when it came time to vote, the law garnered only 7 yeas, not the 8 necessary to override the veto. Last, the mayor just announced a 6-point program that he and city officials hope will keep more housing affordable. It includes tax incentives for landlords and zoning changes. We'll take a look at the program in a future newscast. Now, an investigation. We've heard a lot lately about the ride services called Uber and Lyft that are competing with traditional taxi companies. Reporter Elijah Kaplan wanted to know more, so he spent time with Green Cab, city officials, and with an economist. Uber did not respond to repeated requests for interviews.
A lot of travelers in Somerville and beyond are enthusiastic about a new transportation option, sometimes called ride sharing. Here's how it works. Users request a car through an app on their smartphone, like Uber or Lyft. Nearby drivers may then respond and accept the fare. The user then gets a picture, name, and rating from other users for that driver. Payments are cashless and the companies take a cut of each fare. The rest goes to the driver.
Hi, we're Lyft. Lyft is the idea that people can be brought together through transportation. Today,
but taxi drivers and taxi companies are not so enthralled.
Along comes an app where whether it's, and there's Uber and Lyft and Halo, and so a lot of these ride sharing are kind of skirting the regulations that taxi cabs just cannot. You know, we're still responsible. We're still required to bring our cabs in once a year to be inspected, and we have to have our meters checked once a year and resealed to make sure they're accurate. Our rates are set through our town. So there's a lot of regulations that these apps just don't follow.
Right.
And the real problem is that they're essentially illegal by the letter of the law, and whether it's an ordinance or state law, whatever it is, they are breaking the law and there's zero enforcement.
Uber and Lyft are part of what is often referred to as the sharing economy. But is this term accurate?
Well, the term sharing economy, when used to describe organizations like Uber or Airbnb, is quite misleading. What we mean by sharing is when I have something, maybe I'm driving to the airport and you need a ride, I'll give you a ride along with me and that's fine. When I charge you a fee for taking you to the airport, that's not sharing. That's selling you a service. That's what Uber does. It's not sharing at all. Airbnb charges people for a bed in their home and a room. That's not sharing. That's selling a service. Sometimes these services like Uber or Airbnb or Lyft are considered what's called a neoliberal, or part of a neoliberal way of organizing the economy. And what that really means is that they operate without or with minimal regulation by the government.
A fact that hasn't gone unnoticed by traditional taxi companies like Somerville's Green and Yellow Cab.
Our pricing is set. It is set by the town, and once those rates are set, it's set until we go in and ask them for a raise, where some of these other ride sharing, they agree on a price, and Uber actually has what they call surge pricing, where when it's busy, whether it's a concert or a sporting event, and there aren't a lot of vehicles on the road, you could pay 2 to 3 times what it would cost you to go home versus what it costs you to get in there.
In Somerville, the traditional taxi sector is highly regulated. The city sets rates, oversees medallions, and the police department keeps track of vehicles and drivers.
Well, the taxi industry in Somerville is regulated by city ordinance. The city ordinance regulates the licensing of taxi cab drivers, the issuance of taxi cab medallions, and then the rules and regulations about operation of them, marking of them, cleanliness, roadworthiness, all that. Taxi cab drivers go through a screening process. The taxi cabs themselves are inspected yearly by the police department, and they're subject to random inspection that the officer assigned to the taxi unit can stop them and inspect them for cleanliness and roadworthiness.
Critics of these companies say that drivers are not adequately vetted, that cars may not be up to snuff, and that insurance coverage is insufficient. They also say that drivers are being exploited by companies like Uber, which takes 25% of the driver's fare. Because of these questions and the lack of regulation, some countries, states, and cities have been considering writing new laws to control the industry. Germany recently went one step further and banned Uber altogether. Here in Somerville, Mayor Joseph A. Curtatone is enthusiastic about the new services.
So anybody who knows the mayor and his general policies knows that he's a staunch supporter of innovation, and he's a strong advocate for entrepreneurs and new businesses that are creating new models and new jobs that'll help us move forward in a new economy. And Uber is no different. The mayor loves Uber and Lyft. He's used both services himself. But he's also relied for a long time on our traditional taxi services. So he understands and believes strongly that we need to find a solution that will both allow our new businesses to enter the market while making sure that our longtime businesses aren't put at some type of financial disadvantage.
The traditional taxi industry also has its critics. Medallions cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, drivers work long hours, and sometimes barely make ends meet. Maybe that's why these companies have taken off. Recently, Google Ventures invested $258 million in Uber, which has since been valued at $18 billion.
Uber-type services have been able to enter into the taxi cab industry, because of course that's what they've done, because there are so many problems in the taxi cab system. However, that doesn't mean that Uber is the solution and that deregulation is the solution. That's not what follows from recognizing the problems that exist. In cases like public transportation, the lack of regulation can be an extremely serious problem. Instead of figuring out what we could do to create a good taxi cab system, we allow people to come into the industry avoiding the regulations, handling it a different way that is very profitable for them, but has all sorts of problems for the rest of us, because we're accepting this idea that somehow this is the only way to do it. But there are other ways that these situations can be improved. We don't have to defend the existing way to say that Uber isn't the answer.
How will this transportation war end? It is as yet unclear. But the Metropolitan Area Planning Council has begun preliminary talks with local mayors, including Mayor Curtatone, to find a regional solution to the issue. Reporting for Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Elijah Kaplan.
Next, a follow-up to our report on News Engagement Day. Somerville Neighborhood News reporter Sarah Zhang decided to dig a little deeper into the issue of local news. Sarah, welcome. What did you find?
Thank you. Well, everyone knows about the Somerville Journal and the Somerville Times and the Somerville News Weekly, but what a lot of people don't know is that there are other news sources out there for Somerville residents that are more hyper-local, such as a website that focuses on issues that are in Ward 5 in Somerville or just in Davis Square.
Cool. And is that the only publications? Because I have seen a lot of newspapers around in different languages.
Actually, yes, there are a lot of news sources out there that are in different languages, including newspapers, radio stations, TV channels, and websites. For instance, El Planeta is for Spanish-speaking communities, and there's the Brazilian Times for Brazilians in Somerville.
Sure. Where can people learn more?
Well, I wrote up an article about this, and it's on our website, somervilleneighborhoodnews.org.
Great. Sarah Zhang, thank you for joining us. Well, now let's hear from one of those local news sources, the Somerville Journal.
Hello, this week in the Somerville Journal, we'll be continuing our investigation into group homes following a brutal attack in Winter Hill. We'll be looking at how food goes from community gardens to community restaurants, and we'll be examining the preservation of the Milk Row Cemetery. You can always follow us online at Ville Journal on Twitter and at wickedlocal.com/Somerville, and you can get in touch with me at datkinson@wickedlocal.com or 617-629-3385.
Earlier this month, work crews were ripping out trees, knocking down buildings, and removing soil over where the new Union Square Green Line station will be located. Yishao Yuan wanted to check it out.
And we're going to be moving to excavating dirt and hauling soil out of the area in the next week or so.
TRC is working at the old Kylie Barrow site.
We're going to be digging out about 6,000 tons of soil for disposal. The end result will be 3 feet of soil over the site that will be clean soil.
The contaminated soil comes from all the chemical and toxic products washed out of barrels by the Cali Barrel Company over 4 decades.
If we leave some of this contamination in a residential environment, there is a chance that kids could be exposed, and by putting a clean cap on the soil, that reduces that risk of exposure.
Trucks will pick up the contaminated soil before rush hour, between 6 to 8:30 in the morning. Cali Barrel is part of the D2 development block, one of the 7 parcels being redeveloped around Union Square. D2 is owned by the Somerville Redevelopment Authority, which had to acquire some of the pieces by eminent domain. The total cost of all the parcels was $4,425,000. Work will wrap up and the site totally cleared by mid-December, paving the way for the construction of the Green Line station.
The MBTA station is actually happening in this rail right-of-way behind me. There will be 2 more train tracks added to accommodate the Green Line and incoming and outgoing set of tracks. This station will actually be approximately starting where that fence line is, and will come up. So it's a 2-level train station. You will be able to access the train station further down at ground level, but from this bridge it will actually be up a 2nd level and will come out into this space. Approximately where I'm standing right now is where you'll be able to enter the new station at Union Square.
D2 also contained a small parking lot. The people who had those spots, mostly teachers at Prospect Hill Academy, will now park in the big Union Square lot. But eventually, the square will likely have more parking.
That parking lot was actually a rather small parking lot. I believe it was only 30 to 35 spaces. As part of the redevelopment of Union Square and working with the US2 group, they will be responsible for siting the correct amount of parking throughout Union Square.
Big changes are installed for Union Square. We will stay on the story. Reporting from Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Yu Xiaoyuan.
The Cali Barrel site cleanup is costing about $2.15 million, according to City Hall. That's covered by grants. The demolition of buildings will cost another $730,000 or so. Eventually, the master developer for Union Square, US2, will buy the land from the Somerville Redevelopment Authority. The price is still under negotiation. And here's another update on Union Square redevelopment. News Director Jane Regan attended the October 8th meeting of the Civic Advisory Committee.
Some 50 people turned out to hear from city officials who explained what's next. Once the city and US2 sign the development agreement, the planning phase will begin. Director of Planning George Proakis handed out a calendar. A first step will be to review summer vision and other plans.
There's been about 10 or 12 years worth of different planning work that has already gone on in Union Square about neighborhood planning. One of the first things we're going to do as a city design team with our consultants is look at all of those and figure out kind of what's where.
Planning for the D2 block will move ahead of other blocks because of the T station construction. The community will be involved in discussing various goals.
You know, how much housing, how many jobs, how much open space. You know, there can be some exceptions to that, but that's really where it's easier for everybody to engage together.
Members of the Union United Coalition made a presentation about community benefits agreements.
What it does is, the idea behind it is to lessen mitigate a lot of the impacts, negative impacts of development, and anticipate what those are and come up with corrective measures for those.
And listed what they would like to see in the agreement.
We are focusing on basics of living in Union Square, like place to live, place to work.
We believe that they can be development without displacement.
We'd like the agreement to include that at least 40% of the housing in the redevelopment will be affordable to households ranging from very low income to middle income.
There were a lot of reactions.
It's important that the people who build and revitalize Somerville can afford to live here after everything looks fantastic.
And even discussion about opening up the Civic Advisory Committee.
There should be an opportunity of revisiting
composition maybe of the CAC, making it somewhat more inclusive.
US 2's representative was also present.
I think it was a productive discussion. Appreciate the city's leadership and the CAC's leadership in trying to kind of bring everybody together around one schedule for moving the development forward. And I think that all the dialogue around the community benefits is appropriate, and we look forward to getting into the details with all the stakeholders.
Will the Citizens Advisory Committee be adding new members? Will the Community Benefits Agreement guarantee that beloved local businesses can stay in Union Square? And what about the amount of affordable housing available to Somerville residents? And, of course, local jobs. These are among the issues being discussed as work on Parcel D2 begins. For Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Jane Regan.
Last year, the U.S. Department of Education found Tufts to be out of compliance with Title IX. There was recently a teach-in at the university on the issue. Sarah Zhang brings us the story.
On October 3rd, the Tufts Women's Center and other organizations and programs sponsored a teach-in on Title IX, the gender equality law passed in 1972.
So it was really a multi-institutional event in the model of a teach-in for knowledge exchange between students, administrators, and faculty. We really wanted to do something that had an academic focus on Title IX, so there had been a lot of activism last semester at Tufts and around the country on sexual violence and misconduct on college campuses, and we really wanted to use an academic lens, specifically coming from education.
Sign or resign, we need our Title IX. Sign or resign, we need our Title IX.
On May 1st, the campus erupted when the Tufts administration removed its signature from an agreement with the Department of Education to address the school's shortcomings. Tufts said it was in compliance with Title IX.
How did it feel to read a report that you are out of compliance with Title IX? How did it feel to be named by the federal government as not knowing how to protect your students? How did that feel?
Student pressure forced the administration to re-sign the agreement.
Sign or resign, we need our Title IX.
Senior John Kelly is a survivor of sexual assault. He attended the teach-in.
When a school tries to revoke its signature from a finding of non-compliance, that doesn't exactly, breed trust among the student body. So that was pretty disheartening to see. And there are still a lot of problems that need to be fixed. A dean who was sort of responsible for a lot of the violations that happened and was sort of named in the voluntary resolution agreement is still a dean here, and he's still advising first-year students.
But the administration has taken some steps, and the teach-in was one of them.
So we had multiple different perspectives, both academic, prevention, and response perspectives to kind of address the spectrum of Title IX as it relates to campus sexual violence. So a great theme that came up today in the trans student rights panel was that many people don't know what their own rights are, and that's part of the education and activism that has to happen is students are all protected under Title IX as a federal law.
Another improvement is the hiring of 2 new people.
So the Title IX teach-in was a great example of how to raise awareness on the Tufts campus. Not only did it show what Tufts is doing and what they've been doing for the past year, working hard about policy and definitions around this topic, but really brought together other people who were also doing work to show how do we fit into what else is happening in the colleges around campus, around Boston area. And the goal of the position for me is really to have an active, ongoing conversation about relationships on campus so that people can become more comfortable when they're interacting with each other. There's more social health, there's more social responsibility, so that hopefully people don't get into the situation around sexual assaults and that they can ask for consent.
Will the Title IX teach-in at Tufts allow the university to continue to make the changes necessary in order to remain compliant with Title IX? We will continue to keep our eye out on the story. For Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Sarah Zhang.
Now let's hear some news from the Spanish-speaking community at another newspaper, El Planeta.
El Planeta started in May 2004, and right now we are, for 10 years, informing the community about the topics they need to know. We are a paper that is for everyone, not for a specific group of Spanish speakers, but for all the Spanish speakers that live in Massachusetts. And with El Planeta, we have also WCEA TV, our TV station, that produces local content. It's the only locally owned TV station owned by a minority dedicated to the Hispanic population. Yeah, and some of the topics we're covering these days are, for example, the Ebola topic. People are concerned about Ebola. They don't know if they will be catching it. They don't know what they need to do. And so we're telling people, don't be so concerned. In Massachusetts, we are not gonna get like an Ebola epidemic. It's more likely people die of heart disease than Ebola these days. Also, we are trying to put the people up to date with the gubernatorial race. Our community is worried about who will be the next governor of Massachusetts and if that governor will be doing positive things for the immigrant community. So we are just giving information to people about the different campaign proposals of the different candidates. And last but not least, we are covering also the casino topic. It's a very important local topic in communities like Chelsea, of course, Everett, Somerville. People and small businesses are worried about what the casino will bring to them. We have part of the community that support the casinos and part of the community that are against the casinos. Of course, everything about casinos will be solved after the elections of November 4, and we'll see what happens.
And we end back in Union Square, where we go on a tour.
You have to make it through the first part of the tour to get to the part that's really cool and more relaxing and hopefully enjoyable. My name is Brandon Wilson, and I'm here today as the Executive Director for the Historic Preservation Commission in Somerville, which is an arm of city government that is made up of 14 individuals, all of whom serve voluntarily because of their love and appreciation of older buildings.
We're down on Somerville Avenue. And I should just say that Somerville Avenue was once part of a system of roads called Milk Row. And this was a highway system that started way out in Middlesex County and allowed for the farmers from the hinterlands to bring in their products for sale in the market at City Square, Charlestown, and in the markets of Boston. One of the major products making their way along this corridor were dairy products.
Today's tour is focusing on the western part of Union Square. The goal is really to have other people appreciate what we have here in Union Square. It is going through changes with the Green Line extension coming and a lot of other exciting things happening in Union Square. And so we want, as part of that, for people to know about what's here, about the history of Union Square, and to incorporate and blend that in with the new development that will be coming in a way that's sensitive, blending of the old and the new.
Welcome to Greentown Labs. This is the largest clean tech incubator in the Northeast, and we have 33,000 square feet here that we've divided into an event space, office space, and prototyping space for early stage clean tech startups. We have about 50 member companies here, about 170 employees, and the only thing that we provide is concrete and duct tape. So they bring everything else in. And this is a really popular and unique aspect of our building. Most incubators don't provide a space for people to work on their hardware as well as office space. And we were founded by entrepreneurs, and it's a space for entrepreneurs.
Well, that's it for tonight. We'll be back on November 4th. And don't forget, you can listen to Somerville Neighborhood News online on Boston Free Radio, SCATV's internet radio station. You can hear it every Friday from 6 to 6:30 p.m. at bostonfreeradio.com. You can also watch and read news stories at somervilleneighborhoodnews.org. And be sure to check out our Facebook page, SCATV SNN, and share your favorite segment. Or send us a tweet at SCATV SNN. We welcome you to get involved with Somerville Neighborhood News, become a reporter, or just send in your ideas. Call us at 617-628-8826. or write to news@scatvsomerville.org. I'm Kayla Mamalak, and I'll see you around the neighborhood.